So we've talked about framing now, and it's a big picture tool. But hooks are the small tools that you can hang your frames on, like the ones that Bonnie talked about this morning, using stories, metaphors, anecdotes, and statistics within stories. If you wanted to, for example, work with an audience of war veterans at the VA, you would want to get their attention by relating a scientific idea to a story from their own experience, for example, wound care on the battlefield. In this example, you might find yourself needing to explain the need for controls in a clinical trial to this group of war veterans. So I would recommend a hook, something that they could relate to, like wound care in a battlefield. There was this unintentional clinical trial done by a Renaissance surgeon by the name of Paré in 1537, and you can read more about this article, it's in your packet. The traditional treatment was boiled oil, if you can imagine, putting it on wounds and amputations. Well, one day he ran out. He didn't have any more, and he had to think on his feet. So what did he do? He put together a concoction of rose oil, turpentine, and egg yolk, and treated the rest of his patients for the rest of the day with this therapy. So how do you think the patients responded? Just a guess. Who did better the next day, the boiled oil people or the rose oil people? Show of hands for boiled oil. No? Show of hands for rose oil concoction. Yep. So it turns out that everyone who was treated with this rose oil concoction, their wounds were less painful than the other patients. So Paré, being the kind of Renaissance scientist that he was doing an unintentional clinical trial, he said, well, geez, I'm never going to use boiled oil again. You know, my patients aren't doing well with it. But as scientists in the room, we know that it wasn't a very good control. It wasn't a controlled study because the two different groups were not identified in the same manner, and so we can't draw the same conclusions we would if we had a contemporary control. However, this hook would be very effective if you were speaking to war veterans because you've identified something that they can relate with, and you're bringing it into your story. The public need to craft a sustainable policy that enjoys public confidence. So this kind of turns that whole framing thing on its head. So they're recommending